Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Grace of a Military Child and Life. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Olivia, who is a military spouse. So welcome, Olivia. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Yay, absolutely. So tell me what it's like being a military spouse.
Being a military spouse is full of adventure. I think kind of keeps you on your toes. I am an active duty Navy spouse. So my husband's job has literally moved us across the country more than once. And so we're always keeping me on my toes, always ready to go, always ready for the next adventure.
Yeah, you're always on the move, especially going back and forth from coast to coast. It's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. Those moves are tough. I could not imagine we did like Texas to Florida and Ohio to Texas. And, that's a lot in itself. I mean, moving in general is a lot, but moving cross country is so much.
It is. It really is. The first one we did not have kids. It was just our dog. And he was a trooper. So it felt easier because it was just the two of us. And now with our two kids plus the dog, it was a lot this last time.
Yeah, you've got so much, you've got other lives to worry about. Not just, it's easier when it's just the two of you, and a dog is still pretty easy to manage too, but then you add kids to it, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, for sure. We had such short notice with this last move. My husband was selected to be an executive aide for the admiral out here. And it's kind of a unique position. And it was one that, like, when the opportunity is presented, you kind of can't say no.
Right.
And the admiral was also living in Virginia with us, not with us, but like in the same area. And I met him at his change of command ceremony, and he was like, "Yeah, so do you want to move to San Diego?" And I was like,
"Oh my gosh.
Yep. Yes, we do. Yes, sir, we do." And so we had 4 weeks to get our crew ready to go, which in our previous moves, you get months notice, and you're kind of like, okay, I've got my checklist, I'm doing my things, like all this. So 4 weeks was very abrupt for our little family. And thank goodness my husband's parents are wonderful and were so helpful and watched the kids while we drove the cars out to San Diego. And then I flew back and got the kids and then flew back to San Diego because my husband's check-in date was coming up pretty quick. And with his job right now, it requires a lot of travel. And so we knew that going into it, but it was very much like, let's go get the kids, spend as much time as we can with them. And then dad's going to get on an airplane and we're not going to see him for like 6 weeks. So yeah, it was a lot last summer. This summer has been very nice. Not doing that.
I'm sure it's a good change of pace for once.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. 4 weeks is very, very short notice. I mean, it's not uncommon. It happens, but it's hard to literally in a month pack up your entire life and move to literally the other side of the country.
And thankfully I think there were two hard things. Just leaving my job at our church. My kids were in preschool at the preschool that we loved, and we were in Virginia longer than we anticipated because of COVID. We just kind of made the decision, well, it's, do we want a PCS during COVID?
Right.
If we have an
Nobody
option,
wants to.
no. And it's like, if they're giving us an option to stay, like, let's just stay.
Yeah.
Um, so we really built a community there. And so that was really hard to leave. We were all pretty bummed about that. But thankfully, it wasn't our first time moving to California. So we were like, all right, we know the drill. Like, we know what to expect. We know what neighborhood we should look at, just that kind of familiarity I was grateful for, which I feel like people, and of course, civilians are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, how are you're moving across the country in 4 weeks? Like, people don't do that. And I was
Yeah,
like,
no.
so in the military, it's not pretty normal, but it does. You're right. It happens all the time. Like, more often, I think, than we probably think it does.
Yeah, when, a civilian family thinks about moving, it's not necessarily, all right, well, let's pick up and go. We've got, maybe a couple months. It's
Mhm.
planning it out for a year or so and saying, all right, well, let's get all of our stuff together. Let's go travel, find a house, purchase a house first, put ours on the market. Like, we don't have
Mhm.
that kind of experience where it's like, all right, well, let's take our time. No, it's here
Yeah.
it is. We're doing this right now. And
Yeah.
sometimes it changes midway.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We did, that's something too that, yeah, those like halfway, like, oh, hey, I know we said this place, but actually it's going to be this. It's in the same state. It's in the same state. Don't worry, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, okay. So we were looking at a house over here and now we have to look. Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
is. And the military is just like, yeah, be flexible. Like,
That's like the name of the game. Because if you're not flexible,
okay.
then you're not going to make
It's
it in
so
this
hard.
lifestyle.
Exactly. And that's something that I think in the very beginning. So my husband and I have been married for 7 years. So we've been together for 9. And it was in the beginning something that was definitely an adjustment of just like, what do you mean we're moving from North Carolina to California? Like, I really like it here. It's like, yeah, but they really need me to do this job out in California. And I want to go to California. Like, let's go. It'll be so fun. And this is before a dog, before kid, everything.
Yeah.
And it was there, that excitement of it. But when it came down to moving back to Virginia or moving across the country, the last minute, oh, hey, I know I told you we were going to move to Virginia, but we don't actually have the physical papers yet. So I know we're supposed to go there, but like, don't quit your job yet. And I was like, wait, what?
Like, I don't know when we're going.
I already told my boss, like, we're moving. And he's like, yeah, but like, maybe not yet. And it's like, oh my gosh. So definitely learned a lot of lessons in the beginning
Yeah.
that have helped me like embrace the chaos of it.
Right. Because until orders are printed and signed off, you really have no clue what's going to happen because it could be, 6 months before anything is even happening, or it could be even longer than that, or it could be tomorrow that it happens. So until you have that, there is no clear direction on what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And just kind of like trusting, I think for us, faith is huge in our home. And part of my platform on social media is just like trusting and knowing that God has already knows what's going to happen. And we just have to lean into that and just say, okay, he's got us. He's going to, even though we don't know yet, we think we know, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
He's going to help it. He's going to help us find a house. He's going to help us find a church home. He's going to get us through this. That was a big, I guess, support that we really leaned into last summer, of having that. Hey, I know you really liked living here for the last 5 years, but here we go, back to California, and just trusting and knowing that God's got us the whole time.
Right, because don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know. I mean, for all we know, you could be moving again,
Right.
And so having some sort of, for a lot of military families, it's faith and religion, but for others, there's some sort of other,
Hmm.
platform
Yeah.
of belief that they have. And so by finding what kind of calms your anxiety and your nerves throughout this lifestyle is so important to have
Yeah.
because we have no control over what the military says and what the military does. What they want to happen is what's going to happen. And so
Exactly.
we kind of have to go with the flow through the lifestyle. And if are worried about what's happening next, then you're going to miss out on, what's happening now.
Exactly. That's a wonderful point. I think that I failed at that in the beginning. I was
Yeah.
so feeling so anxious about, okay, where are we going next? What are we doing next? And you miss out, you can miss out on the opportunity of what's happening right in front of you.
Yeah.
Because it is so fun to live in San Diego,
Yeah.
especially now as a parent, and just like the difference, we lived here 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we were, still young, or we're young, but like still young. And,
Yeah.
what's the best restaurant? What's the best place for dessert? Whatever it was. And now it's like, I can tell you where the best playgrounds are and like
Right.
what time, when's the best time to go to SeaWorld? And then what day is the best to go to the zoo? Just stuff like that. And it's kind of that once in a lifetime, even though we've been here twice, but the once in
Yeah.
a lifetime, like, let's just embrace we're here. Let's try, go new places, learn new things. Like, because it is, you never know. We're going to get a call and they're going to be like, hey, we actually need you wherever it may be. So
Yeah.
just kind of enjoying that moment as it happens.
Yeah. And it's fun to kind of see it from the, not mom perspective and then the mom perspective of, like you mentioned, favorite restaurants. And, it's cool to go back to somewhere because the restaurants are more than likely still there. And
Yeah.
so you've already been able to discover that. But then, taking your kids to the zoo and to SeaWorld, and those are
Mhm.
fun memories that they will look back on for, adult and older life that they'll love.
Yeah, I hope so. 'Cause I think from a mom's perspective, looking, or even now, my son will be 5 in December, and just thinking of the places that he's been and the things that he's seen, and it's like, God, that's really cool. And he's only 5, and he's only
Yeah,
going to be 5,
right.
um, and there's still more time in my husband's career. So, yeah, just kind of having that
Yeah.
mentality is it's cool.
Yeah. And you mentioned finding community. It's so important to really embrace that community wherever you are. And both, I think it's so important to find it on base and within that military community. But then it's even fun to embrace it off base within the
Hmm.
civilian community that's there. Because I mean, you've lived on both coasts. Like, you know how different it is in the East versus in the West. And
Oh gosh, yeah.
so finding that experience and that culture within just the United States is so fun to do as well. And then even, you said trying out different churches and finding, the restaurants and talking to, I guess you could say, like the people who grew up there. Um,
Yeah.
that's so fun to do.
Yeah. Yeah, we have actually, we're living off base right now. And we did too when we were here last time because the San Diego area's base housing wait list is very, very long.
Yeah.
um, very, very long. We actually just got a call. So we've been here for, I guess, almost a year and a half now. And we got a call last month that told us that if we wanted a house on base that was available. And
Wow.
my husband was like, thank you so much. We already are in a lease. And so, like
Right.
we had to do what we had to do. But what's really cool is then the neighborhood that we live in San Diego is right next to base housing, and the base elementary school. And so I think that my kids have a great, what's the, like, not view, but they're able to see civilian life and military life combined, which
Right.
I really like. It's what we had in Virginia as well. The base housing, again, the wait list was forever long. And we actually ended up, because we stayed so long there. We ended up buying a house.
Wow.
Um, but the neighborhood was full of military families. So right during COVID, my husband he went up to New York on the Comfort, and there were three other husbands on our street that were also going. So it was one of
Wow.
those like you're not on base, but you feel like you're on base because literally every single one of our neighbors was a military family, which I just loved. You know, everybody's playing in the streets, the sidewalk chalk, hanging out. It was just super super nice to have that community. And then when the Afghan refugees came to Virginia, my husband was called up to go up to Quantico, and there were five other spouses, different spouses then during COVID, that were called to do different things. Some people were on ships, some people were doing, whatever deployments. And so we would all five of us, we're on a text group, we're on, standing out in the driveway. Hey, how's it going? Does anybody want dinner tonight? I made extra, kind of thing.
Right.
And it's that community that helped me so much grow, I think, as a military wife, and just knowing I'm not in it alone. Like there's five other moms that are also solo parenting, like we're all in it together. This can be really hard. It can be really lonely, but I know that I'm not alone because I can see you in your driveway.
Right.
um, but and also sharing the the community that we build around like our children, and then going to the same schools together, and just being intentional with spending our time while we're there with other people and experiencing other things. It's super super nice and super important, I think.
Yeah, because if you don't have that military family support on it, then it's going to be so hard because that's when you really get that isolating feeling and you're
Mm-hmm.
alone and, you know, it's not common. I've seen it before, so I know it happens, but in the civilian world to have that community of a neighborhood where it's like, oh, like, like you said, I made extras. Does anybody need dinner? Or I'm going grocery
Mm-hmm.
shopping. Like, does anybody need anything? So
Mm-hmm.
having just that, even little thing, is game changing because you never know what your neighbors are going through until
Mm-hmm.
you ask and you begin to form that relationship with them, which in the military community, it happens pretty instantly because we're so used to people coming in and out. We're so used to seeing
Yeah.
that moving truck. And
Mm-hmm.
while it's sad because your neighbors are leaving, it's fun because you get to meet new people and,
Mm-hmm.
you go through different experiences together.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yeah. I think that's something my son is starting to pick up on too when he sees the moving truck. He's like, new friends. Yes, new friends. That's right, new friends. Because it is sad to see because that family's leaving.
Right.
But also it is. You have a new family coming in, and that the family leaving is going on their next adventure, and maybe you'll cross paths again, um, and maybe not, just depending on where the military takes you. But yeah, my son associating the truck with the new friends has been my new favorite thing. I'm just like, yay, more people.
Yeah.
Um, and having that, like you were saying, just that instant, like I will just go across the street and introduce myself to our neighbors, just like, hi,
Right.
hello. And I feel like in California, some people, I think it's like a very Southern thing, to be like, hey, y'all, how's it going? And they were like, oh, hi, kind of taken aback. And I was like, do you guys have kids? You guys have kids too? I think I saw a car seat. Like, how's it going? We're from da da da. And they're just like, oh, wow. And I'm like, yeah, do you guys want to come over and watch football? And they're like,
Right.
okay, okay, sure. Because in the military community, you do like you're there, you got to get to know people. Like, you're only there for a short amount of time. And I don't know. And you
Yeah.
never know who's going to end up being your best friend.
Oh, for real. Like I have met even through this podcast, like growing the military community that way, I've met so many incredible people that, I've been fortunate to be able to call them a friend now.
Hmm.
And that's just the way the military is. Like you have to put yourself out there to get anything in return. Because
Hmm.
if you show up to a new base and you go and sit in the corner, during every single event and,
Yeah.
at the playground, you take your kids or whatever, you will instantly feel isolated. And there are people who go out of their way to, greet you and stuff because they know they've been in that position before and they don't want to see people in that position because it's hard.
Hmm.
But if you try to isolate yourself, you will feel more isolated rather than, stepping out of your comfort zone, being an extrovert and trying to make
Hmm.
friends yourself.
Yeah. I think I heard it somewhere recently, but it's like just take the 45 seconds of like awkward
Right.
to have the 10-minute meaningful conversation of just like, just feel, it is awkward. You're literally walking up to a stranger, like, hi, hello, and some people can be like, whoa, like that's a lot,
Yeah.
it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, let's go. But just taking, I think it's worth it to have that 45 seconds of awkward, to have that, to end up with that meaningful conversation that could turn into a great friendship or a play date for a regular play date for your kids or whatever it is. Like I think it's absolutely worth it. I don't think I learned that until, I guess it must have been during COVID, where we, at that point, everybody's still like, do we go outside? How's
Yeah.
everything?
Everyone
Can we
feels
talk to
isolated
people?
anyways.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was like people kind of coming out of their homes like, hello. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, just getting to know people, and it's totally worth it because that community of, hey, I made extra dinner, or hey, do you need anything at the grocery store? It just makes such a difference when you're there. And I think it makes a difference in the long run for your kids, to know that there's other adults that do care about you and your family, and they do know how important dad's job is. Like, just that kind of, I don't know. I just think it's really important.
Yeah. And, at that point, you're making these connections with your kids as well. So your kids know that, this person is trusted. And, if you ever need a babysitter, you have people who you can turn to. My parents,
Hmm.
we met people in like 2, 3 weeks. They had to go out of town to go to DC. Both of them did. And my mom was like, I know I've only known you for like 2, 3 weeks, but can you watch my kids for the weekend? Because
Hmm.
that's the kind of connection you form
Hmm.
within the military community and these trusted people that you wouldn't necessarily, form these connections with a civilian. It's harder
Right.
to form that trust rather than, we step into a community full of military families and it's like, oh, I trust you already because it's
Yeah.
that emergency contact thing. Like, can I write you as my
Yes.
emergency contact?
Yes. And people, and you just get it. You're like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Got you.
Yeah,
Like, do I need to bring extra clothes if I have to pick up your kid? What size do they wear? Like, it just,
right.
those things, there's no hesitation, or for me, there isn't anymore. It's like, yeah, of course I'll watch your kid. Duh. Like,
Yeah.
my sweet, sweet neighbor, she had her babysitter fell through and she's like, I have to go to the dentist. Can you watch the girls? Yes, absolutely. I will always watch your children. She's like,
Yeah.
really? It's like, yes, really.
You don't even have to ask, just
Just,
show up.
yeah, like we will feed your baby. Like, yeah. And I do think that is lost in the civilian community, for sure. Yeah. And so it makes
Yeah,
us unique, I guess.
it is. And I think, that just that community like feeling is gone within everywhere else. And it's so sad to see it because,
Hmm.
we obviously know how important it is and how, good of a feeling it is. But then you have the outside world kind of looking in like two separate worlds, military and
Hmm.
civilian. And it's
Yeah.
hard to understand each world until you actually live it.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Especially working. So I worked full time before COVID. And then our second baby was born during COVID. And we made the decision for me to stay home for at least 1 year before I started back working. And I worked in an elementary school, but not one that was close to a base or anything like that. And it was, my husband was out at sea pretty regularly. And then his other job took him to other places, and people were just fascinated. They're like, how do you do this? What do you mean he's just gone? Like, like one of my coworkers was like, you didn't hear from him for 10 days. And I was like, well, he was out at sea. They had to cut comms. They had to do this, blah, 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 blah. They were doing exercise. And she's like, and you were okay with that? I was like, well, I wouldn't say okay, but like, I knew that's just,
like I wouldn't choose for this to happen, right? But it has to happen. I want
to hear from it. Yeah. It's just, and now, explaining that to our kids of like, Daddy's job is really important, and it's going to be sad sometimes when we can't talk to him when we want to. But, that's what I think makes my kids and myself appreciate when he is home, just going in and out of the office, and we can just, quick FaceTime whenever we want. But it is a totally different world for the civilians to like look into our world.
Yeah.
Just like, I can't believe you do that. I don't know how you do that. Like, me neither, man, but we're doing it.
Yeah, you have no other option but to do it. And because obviously you don't want to leave your spouse, and you have kids, and they're going to have to do it no matter what. So, I mean, there are ways to get out of it if you're in desperate, like, I'm done. But what's the point in that,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so the last thing I want to ask you is, what piece of advice would you give to another military spouse?
Oh, man.
I'm sure there's so much you could say, like an entire book.
There really is. Well, I think, honestly, being flexible, just kind of like, that's just like a given. Like, you just got to do it. You got to be flexible. I would say be patient. Being patient with your spouse's responsibilities. Oh man, there's so much I could say. Be patient. Give yourself grace. Give your spouse grace. Just grace on grace on grace. But be patient.
Yeah.
Be patient and know that God's got you. Lean on him. But yeah, just be patient with your husband's job. Be patient with yourself. You're learning a new city if you're just arriving, or you're just moving, you're about to move or whatever. Just be patient with all of it. I think be my best advice right now.
It'll change.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you mentioned your social media platforms. So where can listeners connect with you?
Oh, yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I just updated my handle. So I am oliviaward.co on Instagram, and I am Olivia Military Mom on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Olivia, for giving us a glimpse into your life and being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, Go AMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's GRACIE @GOAMCL.org with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.